My boss fired me on his birthday. 4 hours later, I joined his biggest rival. But how? Picture this, you're at your boss's birthday party, champagne in hand, when he stands up and humiliates you in front of everyone. 4 hours later, you're signing a contract with his biggest rival. 3 weeks after that, you're leading their campaign against him. Sounds impossible, right? Well, it happened to me. My name is Madeline Cross, and this is how one birthday toast changed my entire life. Let me take you back to that steakhouse. The steakhouse buzzed with laughter and camera flashes. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling while Travis stood at the head of our table, champagne glass raised high. His birthday celebration was in full swing, and I should have been happy for him. After all, I'd helped plan this whole thing. Let's raise a toast, Travis announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. To knowing when to cut dead weight. Everyone laughed and lifted their glasses. I started to smile, thinking he was making some joke about his diet or the company's recent restructuring. Then he turned to look directly at me. His grin widened as he continued, "Some people think they're irreplaceable. Tonight's about celebrating what really matters, results, not excuses." The champagne glass trembled in my hand. People stared. The room fell awkwardly silent except for the soft jazz music still playing in the background. It wasn't a direct firing, but everyone understood the message. My heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. This wasn't just public humiliation, it was a professional death sentence delivered with a smile. 4 hours later, I walked through the glass doors of Hatch and Wolf, our biggest competitor. But this wasn't some desperate job hunt. The preliminary contract was already waiting on Helen Reyes's desk. We'd been quietly negotiating terms for weeks. "Ready to make this official?" Helen asked, sliding the final signature page across the polished conference table. I signed it with steady hands. The groundwork had been laid carefully over the past month, background checks completed, references verified, legal review finished. Tonight was just the moment everything became real. Senior Strategic Director, 15% salary increase, equity package, and most importantly, a clause that specifically stated my previous work portfolio remained my intellectual property where legally permissible. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't plan revenge. I planned my escape. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply succeeding where others expected you to fail. But to understand how I got here, how a humiliating birthday toast became my liberation, I need to take you back. Back to when I first noticed the ice forming around me at work. 2 months earlier, I walked into the office on a sunny July morning, iced coffee in hand, ready to present the Brennan Industries strategy I'd been developing for weeks. This campaign could revolutionize their brand positioning. But when I checked the project board, something was wrong. My name was listed as supporting research, while my junior colleague, Katie, was marked as lead strategist. I stared at the board, convinced it was a mistake. I found Katie in the conference room, nervously shuffling through my presentation materials. When she saw me, her face went pale. "Madeline, I tried to tell Travis this wasn't right, but he said the client specifically requested someone with fresh perspective." The worst part? She looked genuinely uncomfortable, like she knew this was wrong but felt powerless to stop it. Travis sat at the head of the table, checking his phone, completely unbothered by the obvious tension. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was a test, and I was failing before I even knew the rules had changed. 2 weeks later, I stayed late to catch up on reports, trying to prove my value through sheer volume of work. The office was nearly empty when I heard Travis on a call in his office. His door was slightly open, and voices carry in empty spaces. "The board's asking questions about the budget overruns," he said, frustration clear in his voice. "Someone needs to take responsibility, and it can't be anyone they see as essential." My stomach dropped. He was talking about the Q3 review, and I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was heading. She's competent enough, but competent doesn't save you when heads need to roll, he continued. I sat there in the growing darkness, listening to my boss calculate my professional worth like a spreadsheet entry. This wasn't about my performance, it was about Travis needing a scapegoat who wouldn't be missed. That night, I started making copies of everything. Not to use as weapons, but to protect myself in case I needed proof of my contributions. The next morning, I began systematically documenting my work. Every email, every strategy document, every client interaction, all saved with timestamps and metadata intact. I wasn't planning anything dramatic, I was building an insurance policy. The Brennan Industries campaign that Katie had presented? I re-downloaded every file, showing clear authorship and development timeline. My employment contract had a clause protecting intellectual property rights for work I'd initiated independently, something most people never bothered to read. I created a secure folder and named it Professional Portfolio. It felt methodical rather than vengeful, like organizing important papers before a big move. Travis might be planning my exit, but he wasn't going to rewrite history while doing it. Every document I saved was a piece of the truth, carefully preserved against whatever narrative he was constructing. If he wanted to make me the fall guy, I'd at least make sure the facts were available to anyone who cared to look. A week before Travis's birthday, I made a call that would change everything. Daniel Foster, a former client who'd moved to Brennan Industries, had always been professional and fair in our previous work together. Madeline. Great to hear from you, he said warmly. How are things at the agency? We talked about industry trends and mutual connections. The conversation was natural, but I was also listening carefully to his tone, gauging his satisfaction with their current agency relationship. You know, he said almost casually, if you ever decide to explore new opportunities, we value working with strategic minds we trust. I filed that conversation away carefully. It wasn't about immediate job hunting. It was about understanding that my reputation existed beyond my current company's walls. That same week, I updated my LinkedIn profile and portfolio website. Just maintenance, nothing dramatic. But I wanted my professional presence polished and current. 3 days before Travis's birthday, I took a meeting that felt like stepping through a looking glass. Helen Reyes at Hatch & Wolf had reached out through a mutual connection, suggesting coffee to discuss industry perspectives. We've been following your work, she said directly. The Brennan Industries strategy was brilliant, before it got reassigned. So they knew. The industry wasn't as large as people thought, and good work had a way of getting noticed regardless of who presented it. We're always interested in strategic minds who understand client psychology, she continued. If you ever consider a change, we'd welcome a conversation. I was careful not to commit to anything, but I left that meeting with a business card and the knowledge that I had options. Real options, with a company that valued my actual contributions. That night, I researched Hatch & Wolf thoroughly. Their client base, company culture, growth trajectory. Just due diligence, I told myself. Just being prepared. The week of Travis's birthday, office gossip started swirling. Big announcement planned for the lunch, people whispered. The admin assistant seemed excited, he's been working on something special. I pretended curiosity while internally preparing for the worst. Travis had been setting this up for weeks, marginalizing my contributions, elevating others, creating a narrative where my departure would seem logical rather than vindictive. When the invitation came around, I checked, yes, without hesitation. Whatever Travis had planned, running away would only confirm whatever story he was telling about me. I spent that evening preparing mentally. Professional clothing, neutral expressions, and a clear exit strategy if things went badly. If he wanted to make my departure public, I'd handle it with dignity. Most importantly, I sent a brief email to Helen Reyes. I may be available for that conversation sooner than expected. We'll keep you posted. At the restaurant, Travis had prepared a slideshow of recent company successes. Most of it was standard corporate celebration, team photos, campaign highlights, growth metrics. People laughed and toasted as familiar projects flashed across the screen. Then came a slide about strategic restructuring and focusing resources on proven performers. My chest tightened as I recognized the setup. The next slide featured the Brennan Industries campaign, Katie's face prominently displayed alongside glowing client testimonials. My work, my strategy, but presented as evidence of new talent rising to meet challenges. Travis looked directly at me during the applause. Not malicious, just matter of fact. This was business, his expression seemed to say. Nothing personal. But it felt personal. It felt like watching someone else get credit for your children's accomplishments while you sat there, expected to smile and clap along. The real announcement came during dessert. We're implementing some organizational changes, Travis said, standing with his wine glass. Sometimes tough decisions lead to stronger teams. He didn't name me directly, but the subtext was clear to everyone in the room. Effective immediately, we'll be restructuring certain positions to better align with our strategic priorities. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. The Brennan Industries representative looked uncomfortable. Katie stared at her plate. My colleagues shifted awkwardly in their seats. I stood up calmly, placed my napkin on the table, and smiled. Congratulations on your birthday, Travis. I wish you all the best. Then I walked out with my head high, leaving them to finish their celebration without me. On the sidewalk, I pulled out my phone and called Helen Reyes. That conversation we discussed? I'm ready now. Can you come in tonight? Helen asked without hesitation. We can finalize everything we've been discussing. 4 hours later, I was signing the contract we'd been quietly negotiating for weeks. All the preliminary work had been done, the birthday party had simply been the final push I needed to make it official. That evening at Hatch and Wolf, I sat in their conference room reviewing a contract that exceeded my previous salary and title. Senior Strategic Director, not just consultant. We'd been negotiating these terms for weeks through carefully orchestrated coffee meetings and industry events. We move decisively when we find the right people, Helen explained. Your reputation in the industry speaks for itself, regardless of recent workplace politics. The legal team had already reviewed potential conflicts of interest during our preliminary discussions. Everything was clean, professional, and above board. More importantly, they wanted me for my strategic abilities, not as a weapon against my former employer. My official start date was set for the following Monday, giving me a long weekend to process the transition and prepare for this new chapter of my career built on merit rather than office politics. My first day at Hatch and Wolf felt like stepping into a parallel universe where competence was actually valued. My new office had windows, modern equipment, and most importantly, colleagues who judged work by its quality rather than internal relationships. Helen's instructions were refreshingly direct. Show us what you can do when you're not fighting for basic recognition. They assigned me to business development with a focus on strategic accounts, companies that valued innovative thinking over established relationships. It was exactly the kind of work I'd been trying to do at my previous job. Within my first week, I was presenting to 3 potential clients, including one that had specifically requested to work with me after hearing about my availability through industry connections. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about finally being in an environment where my skills could flourish without political interference. 2 weeks into my new role, I got an unexpected call from Daniel Foster at Brennan Industries. I heard you'd made a move, he said. We've been reconsidering our current agency relationship. Would Hatch and Wolf be interested in a conversation? It wasn't personal against Travis or my former company. Brennan Industries simply wanted to work with the person who'd originally developed their strategic framework. They valued continuity and trusted relationships over corporate politics. The pitch meeting went perfectly. I presented a comprehensive strategy that built on previous work while addressing new market challenges. Daniel's team was impressed with both the strategic thinking and the seamless transition. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking approach we need," he told me afterward. "We'll be making our decision within the week." When Brennan Industries officially switched agencies, it sent ripples through the industry. Not because of drama, but because it demonstrated that client relationships follow talent, not company names. Within a month, my former colleagues started reaching out quietly. Not for gossip, but for genuine career advice. Katie was the first to call. "Things have gotten weird since you left," she admitted. "Travis is micromanaging everything, and clients are asking questions about continuity on their accounts." I felt sorry for her. She'd been caught in Travis's political maneuvering just like I had, but without the experience to navigate it effectively. "You're not responsible for other people's management failures," I told her. "Focus on building your own reputation and skills." 2 weeks later, she submitted her resignation. Not to join my company, but to move to a mid-size agency where she could develop her abilities without political interference. It turned out Travis's plan to strengthen his team by removing dead weight had actually destabilized it. Good people don't stick around when they see competent colleagues treated unfairly. 3 months after leaving, I learned that Travis was facing serious questions from senior management. The Brennan Industries loss had triggered a broader review of client retention and team management practices. I didn't seek out this information, it came through normal industry networking. People talked, and patterns became visible when multiple clients and employees cited similar concerns about leadership and communication. A former colleague mentioned that the vendor contract irregularities I discovered had also come to light during the management review. Not through my actions, but through routine financial auditing triggered by the client losses. I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Travis had created his own problems through poor judgment and political manipulation. My departure had simply removed a convenient scapegoat, forcing accountability to land where it belonged. Sometimes justice happens naturally when the truth finally has room to breathe. 6 months later, I was invited to present at the industry's annual strategic planning conference. The invitation came based on my recent successes at Hatch and Wolf, particularly innovative approaches to client relationship management. My presentation focused on sustainable strategic partnerships and ethical business development. No drama, no personal stories, just professional insights gained through experience. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Several potential clients approached me afterward, and industry publications requested interviews about emerging trends in strategic consulting. Standing on that stage, I realized something important. Success isn't about defeating others, it's about developing yourself beyond the reach of other people's limitations. Travis was in the audience that day, sitting toward the back. Our eyes met briefly during the applause, and I saw something unexpected, not anger, but a kind of resigned acknowledgement. After my presentation, the industry press wanted to discuss my rapid rise at Hatch and Wolf. I kept the focus on professional development and strategic innovation, avoiding any references to workplace conflicts or personal grievances. Success comes from focusing forward rather than backward, I told one interviewer. The best revenge is becoming irrelevant to your former problems. That quote appeared in several industry publications and generated positive response on professional social media. But more importantly, it attracted attention from executive recruiters and potential clients who valued strategic thinking over workplace drama. Travis approached me during the networking reception. "You've done well," he said simply, extending his hand. I shook it professionally. "Thank you. I hope things work out well for you too." It wasn't friendship, but it was closure. We were both professionals who'd learned different lessons from the same experience. A year later, I received news that Travis had been quietly reassigned within his company, moved to a strategic advisory role with reduced management responsibilities. Not fired, but clearly sidelined from major decision-making. I felt surprisingly little satisfaction from this news. My energy was focused on building something positive rather than watching others deal with consequences they'd created for themselves. Hatch and Wolf had promoted me to Executive Strategic Director, and I was leading a team of talented people who were chosen for their abilities rather than their willingness to play political games. Katie, who'd left Travis's company around the same time I did, had thrived at her new agency and was developing a reputation as a rising talent in strategic communication. The industry had moved forward, and so had everyone who'd been caught in that particular workplace dysfunction. 2 years after that birthday lunch, I was featured on the cover of Strategic Business Review as one of the rising leaders reshaping client relations. The article focused on innovative approaches to sustainable business partnerships. During the interview, the journalist asked about rapid career transitions and overcoming workplace challenges. I spoke generally about resilience and the importance of knowing your value in the marketplace. The strongest foundation for any career is competence combined with integrity, I said. When you build on that foundation, temporary setbacks become launching platforms for better opportunities. The article never mentioned Travis or my former company specifically, but it generated significant positive attention for both me and Hatch and Wolf. More importantly, it attracted speaking invitations and consulting opportunities that established me as a thought leader in strategic business development. Looking back now, I understand that Travis did me an enormous favor, though he certainly didn't intend to. His attempt to scapegoat me forced me to advocate for myself and seek opportunities that matched my actual abilities. If he'd never pushed me out, I might have stayed comfortable in a situation that was limiting my growth. Sometimes the worst thing that happens professionally becomes the catalyst for the best thing that could happen. I still have the business card Helen Reyes gave me during that first coffee meeting. It sits in my desk drawer as a reminder that opportunities often exist parallel to our current situations. We just need to be brave enough to explore them. The champagne cork from Travis's birthday party? I kept it for a while as an odd memento, but eventually threw it away. Some symbols of the past aren't worth preserving. These days, I mentor young professionals who are navigating difficult workplace situations. The most important lesson I share is this: your value isn't determined by any single person's opinion or any one company's culture. Build your reputation on work quality and professional relationships, I tell them. Politics are temporary, but competence is portable. I've learned to recognize the warning signs of toxic workplace dynamics early and address them professionally rather than hoping they'll improve on their own. Most importantly, I've learned that walking away from a bad situation isn't failure, it's strategic decision-making. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is bet on yourself when others won't. When people ask me how I bounced back so quickly from that humiliating birthday lunch, I tell them the truth: I didn't bounce back. I moved forward. There's a difference between recovering from something and transcending it. Recovery implies returning to a previous state. Transcendence means using the experience to reach a better place than where you started. Travis thought he was ending my career trajectory. Instead, he accidentally launched it into a completely different orbit, one where I had more control, better opportunities, and clearer understanding of my own worth. The woman who walked into that birthday party was talented but willing to accept mistreatment for the sake of stability. The woman who walked out was someone who understood that real security comes from competence and professional relationships, not from trying to please people who don't value you. Today, I walk into client meetings with the confidence of someone who's been tested by adversity and emerged stronger. My heels click against marble floors like punctuation marks in a story I'm still writing. When young professionals ask for career advice, I tell them, your reputation belongs to you, not to any employer. Build it carefully, document it thoroughly, and never let anyone else edit your professional story. The birthday toast that was meant to humiliate me became the moment I stopped accepting other people's definitions of my worth. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the worst experiences. If I could go back and change what happened at that birthday party, I honestly don't know if I would. The humiliation was real and painful, but it was also the push I needed to discover opportunities one might never have pursued otherwise. Travis taught me that loyalty to people who don't value you is just another form of self-betrayal. He showed me the importance of having options, maintaining professional relationships beyond your current employer, and always being prepared for unexpected changes. Most importantly, he demonstrated that the best response to professional adversity isn't anger or revenge, it's excellence that speaks for itself. The story doesn't end with dramatic confrontations or public vindication. It ends with me building something better than what I lost, surrounded by people who value competence over politics. I never needed Travis to fail for me to succeed. I just needed to stop waiting for his permission to demonstrate my worth. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well enough that your former problems become irrelevant to your current success. And that's exactly what happened. The woman who was humiliated at a birthday party became someone who couldn't be diminished by anyone else's limitations. That transformation wasn't revenge. It was evolution.